Hello, world. You're listening to Feel Good, the podcast. I'm your host, Malika Lee, and we are on 105.7 FM KVRU. My guest today, Dr. Michael Kane. Welcome to the show, Dr. Kane.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Glad to have you. Dr. Kane has earned his doctorate in clinical psychology from Argosy University in Seattle, Washington, and he has been practicing psychology for the last 33 years. So he has joined me today. We are going to talk about the holiday blues. Dun, 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 dun. Dr. Kane, do you have the blues?
Getting there.
Getting there. Is that somewhere to get? I don't know. I think it's maybe, it sounds like you're doing all right.
I'm doing okay.
If you don't mind, I've done my own research, but since I have an expert both in, your professional pursuits as well as experientially dealing with the holiday blues, as have I, can you just share for our listeners what is it? What is the holiday blues? How do you know if you have it or you don't?
Holiday blues it can be compared to, let's say, low field or low grain depression and anxiety that comes up out of nowhere during holiday seasons. It could be triggered by memories, by songs, by observations of what you see and what you have experienced. And it just comes up like a fog. And it's before you know it, you're in it. So that's what I would define some of what I would call holiday blues.
What is your personal experience with the holiday blues?
My personal experience is not too long ago, I lost my wife following the holidays. And so the holidays always trigger those memories of our togetherness as a family and as a couple. And as I now walk what I call the landscape, I walk it alone, and the memories of my beloved spouse, they continue to come up. And as time goes by, it gets lighter, but the holiday blues are still there.
My condolences about the passing of your wife. How long has it been?
It'll be 8 years. 8 years this January.
And did you experience the holiday blues ever before her passing that you can recall?
Not really. We had such a wonderful marriage. We were together for 30 years, and I'm thinking back. There were the holiday blues, and when I was in the military and I was away from home, experiencing living apart from my family. I can recall that. So holiday blues, they could be a factor of life. It's just a living.
So I experienced also the holiday blues a couple years ago. My father passed in 2014, and it wasn't that year or the next year. I feel like it was about 2 years ago, so 2017. And I just felt this heaviness, and I didn't understand why. There wasn't anything I could outwardly pin it to. But I was just aware of just this like heavy, the way I can describe it, it didn't feel like sadness, but I just felt more lethargic, not like as upbeat and energized as I normally feel. Is that part of it also?
Yeah, it sort of weighs on your spirit. It's sort of this heavy weight. It could be this sense of darkness as well. Mm-hmm. And you're walking and you got this cloud that seems to be with you. You can't get rid of it. And then at some point, it lightens up. And you see yourself moving on. The holiday blues are gone.
There's the seasonal, what is it, the seasonal?
Seasonal affective disorder.
Affective disorder, which has similar symptoms to holiday blues. How can someone know what's the difference?
Well, seasonal affective disorder we can attribute that more towards about climate and weather and, where we live, whereas holiday blues can occur at any point during the holidays and it's triggered by music, by memories, by songs, by previous experiences.
So I think with what we've said so far that listeners probably have a good sense of what it is. And I wanted to bring up one other question because when I was doing my research before our show, one of the things they mentioned about the holiday blues was anxiety. and anxiety around buying gifts or the expectations of being around family. So is anxiety, which is a different energy than the heaviness and the grief and depression, is anxiety, could that be a part of it as well?
Yeah, because we're always concerned about, did I buy the right gift? If it's just going to make my kids happy and or my spouse content. Um, did I get the most up to date technological or the right toy that my kids would like? So and it's always also tuned in terms of money, in terms of how much money is being spent. That could be an issue as well. Financially we can become overburdened, and therefore it impacts the quality of the holidays that we have and time that we spend with our families.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember going through that a number of years ago when money, I was on a budget and wanting to buy gifts that were really thoughtful and heartwarming and still having the constraint of how much I could spend and really getting worked up about it and so anxious. And after that Christmas, I think I just opted out of buying gifts really at all, unless I see something and I'm just like, this is for this person, and it doesn't matter what time of year it is, I'll get it. But otherwise, I just opt out of the Christmas, the whole consumer, gift giving in that traditional sense. Have you dealt with the gift anxiety or any of that before?
Oh, yes. I deal with it personally in my personal life as well as within my practice. And it seems like the closer we get to that day, Christmas Day, we get so amped up or so wrapped up. It's a relief. Come Christmas morning, it's over with. But
Hopefully.
yeah. Hopefully, yes.
Not morning. Some people have to meet family members and everything, right? Like the gift giving can go on all day. You go to different houses.
And then we start all over again for next year. We start planning again. So this is an ongoing, holiday blues is ongoing. It's not something that just stops. It can be ongoing.
So how did you personally deal with the gift, I want to call it something that it probably isn't, like the gift-giving anxiety bug. How did you deal with that?
Well, I decided to limit in terms of how much that I'm going to spend in regards to gift giving. And I'm going to provide the person with the option of returning the gift for something that they would like if the gift that I gave them was something that they didn't like.
Okay, so you made it pretty easy. And you said gift giving. You give your patients gifts also during the holiday, or how does that play into it?
Actually not.
Yeah, I was like, why did he say that?
Actually not. I was thinking more in regards in terms of colleagues and family.
Okay.
I give gifts to them, but to my patients, that's crossing the line.
Yeah, okay. I understand. I just wanted some clarity on that. So thank you for clarifying. What are some things, if someone is feeling stressed out, or whether it's like the heaviness that you're talking about in the fog, what are some supportive things that people that are feeling that way can do this time of year?
Well, one of the issues that we're concerned about is that sense of aloneness, of being alone. Mm-hmm. And so that can be responded to by making sure that the individual is in contact with other resources, other people, family members, friends. And the idea is to, not that the person has to be therapeutic, but just be a good listener in mm-hmm. terms of hearing or listening to what what you may be going through. So you're just asking the person to spend some time and just listen to you and understand, that you're going through a rough patch. That's one way. Another way would be is to consider the different activities that are available. Mm-hmm. Keeping yourself involved, not busy, but keep yourself involved and invested in community activities, family activities. Making sure that you're eating well, that you are focused on good nutrition and good sleep. Considering relaxation, meditation, other things such as of that quality.
What are some of the things that you've done personally to support you with it?
Well, I'm looking at spending more quality time with me. With me.
Why not? I thought you were the most important thing. Aren't you the most important person in your life?
I am. I truly am. What I'm doing now is, initially when my wife passed away, it was a very dark era for me. Mm-hmm. And as time went on and I began to accept the loss, the grief of her not being here, I began getting involved in other activities. So what I'm doing now is I'm spending more time traveling. I'm traveling across the country. I'm traveling around the world. I'm getting involved in different activities. I just returned from New York. I'm looking forward to returning to New York to see another play.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to be traveling over to Europe to do different things over there as well within my field as a psychologist. So I'm just going to stay active. I'm going to keep myself involved and invested.
And one of the things that I'm hearing, because I put down travel, I thought that might be one of the ways that you deal with it. And it helps to break it up, especially if you're living in the same home that you shared with your wife. Are you?
Yes, yes. I haven't. I've lived in the same home. I've done some remodeling in terms of creating more space for me,
Mm-hmm.
not just in terms of my wife and I, but space just for myself. And besides the traveling and the remodeling, I'm looking in terms of the hobbies I'm involved in, listening to music, um, pulling out the old saxophone and playing that a little bit.
What?
Yeah.
Did you bring it today?
No, I didn't bring it
Oh, you
today.
were holding out. We could have really done the blues today. Not just talked about the blues, we could have sang the blues.
Maybe next time.
Okay, I'm going to hold you to that. I didn't even know that you played.
Alto sax.
Okay.
And my main player, my main guy is Cannonball Adley.
Oh, I don't even know who that
Yeah,
is.
Cannonball Adley. Yeah, big man from Tallahassee, Florida. Yeah, Cannonball Adley.
What genre does he play?
Plays jazz, southern
Jazz.
jazz. Yeah, he's got that Florida sound. So it's very, very nice. Very, very smooth. Very smooth.
You're giving me all kinds of an education today. So, you've given us a lot of helpful information about how to recognize if we're dealing with the holiday blues, what things that we can do. I just wanted to share a couple of things that I found on NAMI's website. NAMI stands for the National Alliance on Mental Illness, and it's one of the largest grassroots mental health organizations in this country dedicated to building better lives for the millions of Americans affected by mental health. And one of the things that came up that was really interesting, and I'm wondering if you could speak to this or maybe not, but it said that people who are already dealing with a mental illness report a 64% of them. Let me start that again. Dang it. Never done this many. And I'll start it to 1630. Oh, you know what I haven't done? I need to do the tag. I'll do that first. Okay, Dr. Kane, I was doing some research before our time together today, and I came across some interesting information from NAMI, which stands for the National Alliance on Mental Illness. It's the nation's largest grassroots mental health organization dedicated to building better lives for the millions of Americans affected by mental health. So we were talking about the similarities between like grief and depression, except that the holiday blues, it just happens during a specific time of year.
That's correct.
Yeah. And it was saying that 64% of people with mental illness report the holidays make their condition worse.
That makes a lot of sense.
Does it? Why?
Yeah, because, just imagine that here you are, you're dealing with mental illness, and then along comes the holiday season, and it sort of just, it magnifies, those feelings that you're dealing with. It magnifies the darkness, the depression, the grayness. It magnifies that anxiety, all this. And it's being reinforced by the memories and by thoughts and by music or by the sounds that you see, that you hear and things that you see. So it would make sense that people who have depression and anxiety would be more impacted during the holiday seasons in terms of the holiday blues.
It also gave some pointers about, going back to NAMI and this research, it gave some pointers, and I'm just wondering, I want to bounce them off of you to hear what your thoughts are of them personally. So one was not to worry about how things should be. and that often we can compare ourselves or the lives we want to have. Sometimes maybe the disconnect between the life you really want and the life that you actually have, maybe it seems amplified or wider, a wider gap during the holidays, especially if you want to be married or want a family and you're blatantly aware that that's not the case right now. So it's saying to let that go, and that even if people who have families have their own stressors and it's not perfect. You agree with that?
Well, it's sort of like the grass is greener on the other side. And you find out realistically that it's not. You know, the grass on one side of the street is just as green as grass on the other side of the street. You know, you think that people who have families or who have the things that you're looking for in life that you don't have, that their lives are easier, you find out that their lives are maybe just as difficult as yours. Just, so the idea is just live the life that you're living. You know, focus on what it is that you want. Focus on what you're doing, and continue to live the life that you want to live, and stay focused on that.
Is that easier said than done, though, Dr. Kane?
Of course. Of course. But it doesn't mean just because it's difficult doesn't mean that you stop doing it. You just continue, as I would say psychologically, is that you continue to walk the landscape. You continue to experience the journey of living your life.
What does that mean? I've heard you say that term a couple times now.
We tend to focus on the destination, and we focus on the destination, we miss out on the true meaning of living life.
Mm-hmm.
So walking the landscape is experiential. It's about touching, tasting. It's about being. It's about being there. Just being there and enjoying that particular day. I like to look at life this way, that yesterday has passed, today is fading, and tomorrow has not been written. And it's for us to live with the moment and continue looking for the tomorrow.
When you experience the holiday blues or the heaviness, like you were saying earlier, during the holiday times and missing your wife, what does walking the landscape look like for you? Does that mean you just sit with your feelings, or you acknowledge them and then you do something else like give back, or, you set your trips, or what does that mean in your life? How does that look?
Well, it's important to understand the difference between sitting with your feelings and sitting in your feelings.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Now, when we sit in our feelings, we tend to become overwhelmed.
Mm-hmm.
There's a possibility of feeling that we're drowning.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea of sitting with your feelings is that you are able to be mobile. You're able to have some fluidity. You're able to continue to, as I would say, walk the landscape, to see that journey of self-discovery.
Mm-hmm.
So the goal for me is to always be walking that landscape and being with my feelings and not being in my feelings. And understand that there will come those times when I am going to be in my feelings, but I want to be able to recognize it so that I can make that transformation, so I can be with my feelings. So when I find myself becoming overwhelmed by the holiday blues, I'm able to not so much snap out of it, but move towards transforming. I can transform by being involved with other people and other activities, making sure that I'm keeping myself hydrated well, and that I'm eating well, and that I'm involved. I'm not just existing, but I'm living.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we want to do when we're dealing with the holiday blues. We make sure that we are striving and not just surviving. And holiday blues will have you in a mode of survival. So again, the goal is to move from surviving to driving to striving, and hopefully one day we will be able to thrive.
I get that. Of course, that opens up some questions. And thinking about our listeners, I want to go back to one of the first things that you said, because I understood what you're saying about the difference between being in your feelings or with your feelings. What are your steps when you notice that you're in your feelings to get to a place of then being with them?
What I'm looking for, I call it the ABCs.
Okay.
I'm looking for the first one. The first part is the A is the advocacy.
Mm-hmm.
That I am going to advocate for me, for the self, for the psychological self. I'm going to use the energy that I have from within to help transform me to a place to a more healthier place that I can achieve, which is the B, which is balance. And the balance is not external, the balance is internal. It's within me. Okay, so I want to make sure that I'm moving from advocacy to balance to the next step, which is calmness. And calmness is my external environment. And for me, once I have achieved calmness, then I've been able to empower me. I'm able to empower me to do the things that I want, to live the life that I want. So again, I'm looking at advocacy, balance, calmness equals empowerment.
Okay, so if we can boil it down, because I understood everything you said, but then I was like, I don't have a grasp of what that looks like. So the first thing you notice, if we were to break down the steps of going from in your feelings to with your feelings, the first thing is to notice you're in your feelings, right?
Yes.
And so for what's an alert that you're in your feelings versus with your feelings?
An alert would be that deep sense of dread, that sense of darkness, that sense of being overwhelmed, of lost space. You'll know it. You'll know it when you feel it.
Yeah, it's one of those things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the idea is to recognize that. And then it's like, okay, what do I want to do about that? Okay. And that's where we start looking at balancing. And balancing helps us move towards being with it rather than being in it.
So how do you balance once you feel the weight of something? Is it an outer something that you do, or do you have like a plan to support you in balance? What does that look like?
Balancing could be a variety of different things. Balancing could be, for example, spending time journaling. It can be time spent with self in regards to reflection. Reflection in terms of not only in terms of what life has been like, but what is it you want life to be? What is life now, and what do you want life to be like? Balancing is also about projecting. It's about setting reasonable goals and objectives, and moving towards those goals and objectives.
And is it okay just to cry?
Crying is healthy. Crying is good. The issue that I have with men is that we live in a society that men are not encouraged to touch those sensitive emotions such as tears. Tears are good. Tears are great. Tears are excellent. And I would encourage us to be able to utilize those tears, to express those tears.
I agree with you. I think that's great. And women too, because, we sometimes apologize or have disconnected from our tears too.
Of course.
So we're not going to get to all the things on the list. Some of them you touched on already as far as traveling, giving some thought to, I'm going back to the NAMI list of different things to support someone who's feeling the holiday blues. One of the things that I like on here that I wanted to speak to is don't try to be a superhero or heroine. And sometimes with like the family traditions that happen during the holidays, going back to the anxiety or sometimes the depression, is like this high expectation of cooking things from scratch like grandmother used to do, which takes a day and a half, and you're working full time. And I see you nodding your head. What do you want to say about that?
Well, I believe that we want to adjust. We want to adjust to the times that we live in. We're no longer living during those. We're no longer in grandmother's times. We're in these times. We're in times of the today. We're not going to be able to spend a day and a half in the kitchen, prepping for that one big meal. That's just not possible. So what can we do as a collective? How can we do this differently so we can have more of an enjoyable time? So one person doesn't have to be the super person, that we can just enjoy this moment that we call family time.
Well, some people don't enjoy family time. That's part of the holiday blues too.
That's part of holiday blues, yes.
What do they do to take care of themselves?
Well, you want to limit the time that you spend. Limit the time you spend with individuals that add stress rather than decrease stress in your life. And perhaps focus more on activities, that's going to decrease the stress rather than increase stress. So just be careful, making sure that you take care of number one, which is self. Take care of self.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting is really about having the courage to honor what feels right and true for you versus falling under the weight of what we think other people might expect from us.
Right. I agree, 100%.
But I did have a question for you. My question to you, Dr. Kane, is oftentimes like 8 years sounds like a long time to feel this heaviness every single year during the holiday season. Is it something that can go away? Because I could sense, some people might be getting discouraged, like, oh my gosh, this has been going on so long. Is it something that I'll ever really have relief from and peace from during the holiday season? What would you say?
One could say that 8 years is a long time to be grieving the loss of a loved one, but 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 grief is an ongoing thing. The goal for us is not to stop grieving. The goal for us is for grief to become lighter, and for us to learn how to balance the grief in our life. The grief is a reflection of the memories, of the joys, of the pleasures that came along with the memories of that particular person. There's nothing. I have no remorse in terms of holding on to my grief for the last 8 years. What I can say is that it's lighter, and hopefully it will continue to get lighter. I have beautiful memories of my Linda. I loved her. I will always love her, and I will always be in love with her, and I will continue to live the life that I want with those memories of her, holding on to those memories of her as I continue to move on in my life. So no, I don't have any issues with that at all.
I've heard before that the depth of our loving is the depth of our grief. It sounds like it's possible that one could never stop grieving. Is that what you're saying? Or is there, I don't want to say light at the end of the tunnel, but I just want to hear your perspective on this.
There are different ways of looking at it.
Okay.
There are those who look for the light at the end of the tunnel. And I say, well, what happens if you never see that light? Then you're disappointed. So rather than look for the light at the end of the tunnel, what prevents us from being able to just balance what we have, balancing that grief so it becomes lighter? So we learn how to balance it, how we learn how to balance the burden. So it becomes so light that it just is a part of us, that we're okay, that we can be whole even with holding the grief. As we hold the loss, we continue to live our lives.
Mm-hmm.
Grief is nothing more than an emotion. It's a feeling. And we grieve. How do I provide the professional response that people are looking for, at the same time be the human being that I am? How do I share my professional wisdom and give it the human response that I desperately so want to be clear about, especially when I talk about the love that I have for my wife. People will say, well, she's been gone all this time. How are you holding on? It's not that I'm holding on, and I continue to live. I hold those memories that are so powerful and so beautiful, so reflective in terms of the life that we had together and the life that she wanted for me as I continue to live my life today. I'm truly a blessed man, truly blessed. And I honor her. As I live my life, I honor her.
Absolutely. And I asked you to be on the show, not because you're an expert, although you are, and you have all the letters behind your name to prove it. But I asked you here because of your experience. Because as you know, there's a difference between the theory and talking about something versus the walking with or through something. And the walking with and the through of your experience is what people connect to. And so that's why I asked you here, because I know you have both. And so thank you for demonstrating courage and vulnerability as we had this conversation today and straddling the line, so to speak.
Sure. It's been my pleasure to be here today.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Kane. All right, and thank you all for listening. So you've been listening to feel good. Although right now I will say, even though it's called feel good, crying sometimes feels good. What do you say about that, Dr. Kane?
It feels wonderful to sit here with tears and express those feelings that I have for my beloved. Crying is good. And I would encourage us to cry more, not less.
Amen. And do you want to I would like to dedicate this episode to your beloved, if that's okay. Do you mind just speaking her name? This is in memory and service to
My Linda. Her name is Linda, but I call her my Linda. My wonderful, sweet Linda. My Linda.
And I'm sure for those listening that are still trying to find their beloved, that we are inspired from your deep connection and love for her that has transcended physical time, really. And so thanks for those of us who are still looking for our partners, that it's possible to be loved so deeply and held in that way.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kane. And you have been listening to Feel Good. My name is Malika Lee. My guest today is Dr. Michael Kane. And here's to you feeling good, or at least feeling better this holiday season.